Right, let me answer a question. People are asking me all over the place on Twitter, on here, email messages. Where's all the content gone? Well, I'll tell you where all the content's gone. It's in a big archive in Patreon. So if you want all the content, and that includes Patreon content, which is about 500 or 600 podcasts and videos, then sign up on Patreon for 1 month at $20. Download the 500 or 600 podcasts and videos, which makes them about, I don't know, I can't remember exactly. Is it 4 cents? 4 cents a podcast or video, and then sign out again. So $20, you get the whole fucking thing. If they're not worth 4 cents per podcast, then they're really not worth very much to you, are they? So you're not missing much. So I think that's a fair deal, and hopefully we'll put an end to all the questions. I was only doing this for money. No, I'm not. The reason I just squashed a fly. The reason I'm doing this is because it's highly likely I won't be putting very much more content on here. And as for Patreon, maybe another year. For various reasons. This has cost me a lot of time and a lot of money to produce all this material. I could have been pursuing my old business, which is butleranalytics.com. Yeah, go and have a look at it. I haven't put anything on there for years, and it was a great little business. Anyway, so I'll probably go back and do some of that because I quite fancy it. I've given enough. If it's not worth 4 or 5 cents a video, then you're not missing anything, are you? So, the title of this, as you can see, is Post-Spiritual Recovery. It's aimed at people who are recovering from being spiritual. Well, what do I mean exactly by spiritual? Well, I don't know. One of the first podcasts I did was What is Spiritual? And that was 4 years ago, 5 years ago, whenever it was. And I still don't know the answer to that. I don't think anybody knows the answer to it. Spiritual of the spirit. Well, what is spirit exactly? So, we're talking about an undefined term which people then pursue because it sounds good. It sounds like it will take them away from the mundane nature of our everyday existence. Well, it could do. Could you send you to the madhouse? That's definitely away from everyday mundane existence, isn't it? Anyway, a lot of people devote 10 years, 20 years more, most of their life to trying to be spiritual. This thing that is totally undefined. And after 20 years or however long, they kind of have the honesty to say to themselves, actually this is going nowhere. So, the whole spiritual world is populated with words that don't mean anything. You remember the quantum consciousness thing? Was it Deepak Chopra invented that one? Doesn't mean anything. It sounds good. He's kind of borrowing a fashionable term from physics, quantum mechanics, but doesn't mean anything. So, in the world of spiritual matters, words are undefined, reason is prohibited. Maybe you've tried to be loving and kind, but just became more spiteful and savage. There are reasons why you would become more spiteful and savage as you try to become more loving and kind. But I'm not going to go into all of that. Maybe you meditated a lot and became mentally ill. very good article in Harper's Magazine about people who meditate too much and the psychological and physical cost of doing that. Maybe you try to be very mindful. You know, you walked sensing your feet on the floor, or you tried to all day. The reality is you could only do it for a minute or two. But the frustration of it, of inhibiting your body in that kind of way, meant you just ended up kicking the cat. Or maybe you believed in your morning gratitudes. And so you get up and you say, oh, thank you, nature, God, or whatever. Thank you, Spirit, for my existence. Thank you for all the loving people around me. Thank you for, you know, and you go on. When the reality is that you've got a real shit relationship with your partner. You've just found out that that lump growing on the side of your head is what's the word? Malignant. And so, you know, your gratitudes start to sound a bit hollow. And so they start to stick in the throat. You see, all the spiritual stuff is really just the creation of a pretend world, because this world is too harsh and difficult to deal with. So we create a pretend world where we meditate and we say gratitudes and we become mindful and we try to be loving and all that kind of stuff. The net result of trying to be spiritual, after sufficient time, is that people become disillusioned, angry, although very often, unfortunately, still hopeful that, you know, the next thing is going to do it. The next buzzword. The latest one is non-duality, isn't it? I think that's a pretty good one. Let's create a new buzzword here and now. Look, I'm going to give you the key to going and making your $1 million. Integrative consciousness. There we go. You integrate your consciousness with everything else in the world. You can make a whole story behind it, because in the world of spiritual matters, the definitions of the words and the meaning of the words don't matter. It just has to sound good. And you have to wear a saffron robe and stuff like that, you know. So, you can't blame people for trying to be spiritual, because the world is hard and you know, fairly brutal. So it's really a flight into imagination, because reality is too hard to bear. But that is a terrible mistake. The way to deal with reality is to stare it in the face. And from that, you'll gain strength. So, you know, maybe I should start a spiritual recovery program. Maybe I could make $1 million doing that. Somebody will do it. And all these thousands of people who are spiritual, you know, who get pissed off with the damn thing, will pay $2,000 to do a 3-month course on spiritual recovery. So, in spiritual recovery, we look at the world as it really is. So, the reality of your life, this is brutal. Turn off now if you don't want brutal stuff, and go and do some more spiritual stuff. It might be more pleasant. So, the reality of your life is that you'll know small pleasures, box of chocolates, a smoke maybe, some decent sex, which lasts, what, for 10 minutes or something. A job promotion. So small pleasures versus not so small pains. Not so small pains. Your partner dies, who you love very much. That's a big pain. That's going to stay with you for a long time. Some horrible disease that is debilitating. That is a big pain that's going to last with you for a long time. Because the nature of life is that we are driven by pain. Again, there's a whole story behind that, but I'm just giving you the bullet points. So, small pleasures, not so small pains, and then we die. That's hard to face, isn't it? But that's the kind of reality of it. There is a notion that human beings are naturally mutually supportive, within families or societies or at work. They're not. Human beings are naturally mutually hateful. If you can accept that, the world starts to make sense. So what is hateful behavior? Well, envy, bragging. They're two of the more kind of hidden forms of hate. Other forms of hate end up with violence or whatever, which doesn't usually materialize in our society. We're much more cunning. We're much more cunning about expressing our hate these days. The reality is that you'll only gain what you're looking for if you can lose all hope. There's a wonderful quote in Fight Club. Tyler Dayton, is it? The character played by Brad Pitt. When he says, you can only be free if you've lost all hope. It's absolutely true. In fact, it's a very profound truth, is that. You see, hope is the other side of fear. And so if you've got lots of hopes, it means that there's a lot of things that you fear. And you're certainly not free if you fear a lot of things. The reality is that pain drives the world of sentient creatures. Now, on the face of it, that's a negative. But if you learn to deal with the real world, then you'll find that you can get pleasure and power by understanding pain. And that's a big one. And in fact, that may be the most significant pleasure you will ever know. Understanding pain. Strange, isn't it? And people who've pursued that kind of thing will say things like, well, I've become more solid, I've become stronger, I've become more at ease with things. Well, of course they're more at ease because they're dealing with reality, and in a sense they've conquered it because they've looked it in the face. Unfortunately, spiritual people tend not to do that, and so they end up with nervous breakdowns and all kinds of denial stuff going on. So, the post-spiritual recovery program is just $2,000. Sign up below.